They say a cemetery is the most peaceful place on earth, and for a long time, I believed that. The silence, the stillness, the profound sense of finality was a comfort. But that peace is a lie. The stillness is just a pause, and the silence is a trick. I learned that on the night the dead decided to follow my patrol route. It was a cold, chilling night, and the full moon cast long, dancing shadows across the gravestones, shadows that seemed to move on their own accord. I was a man of routine, a man of logic, and I was about to have my entire world shattered by a ghost that didn't just haunt the cemetery. It haunted me. My name is Ben, and for a year, I worked as the late-night security guard at one of the oldest, most sprawling cemeteries in the city. The job was perfect for me. The pay was good, the hours were quiet, and there was a profound, humbling beauty to the place at night. I was a skeptic, a man who saw the world in facts and evidence. I had worked there for a year, and I had seen nothing to challenge my rational worldview. My routine was a simple one: patrol the perimeter, check the gates, and make a final round through the oldest, most elaborate section of the cemetery before dawn. The sounds of my keys jingling, the crunch of my boots on the gravel path, and the beam of my flashlight were the only sounds in a world of silent, forgotten stone. The first strange event was a sight I initially dismissed as a trick of the light. I was on my patrol, a familiar, well-trodden path through a section of the cemetery where the headstones were old and worn, their names long faded. I saw a figure in the distance, a man standing by a tombstone. I dismissed it as a late-night visitor, a grieving family member, but the man was too still, too silent. He didn't move, not a muscle. The air was a profound, suffocating stillness. When I turned my flashlight on him, the figure was gone. I told myself it was a shadow, a trick of the light, but a cold knot of unease had formed in my stomach. The second strange event was a single rose placed on a new grave that I had checked only minutes before. I dismissed it as a late-night visitor, but a few hours later, I found another rose on a different grave, a grave that was 100 years old. The rose was pristine, not a single drop of dew on it, as if it had been placed there just a moment ago. The cold knot of unease became a deep, gnawing dread. My paranoia grew when I started hearing sounds that shouldn't be there. A faint, rhythmic dragging sound on the gravel path behind me. I stopped, turned around, but there was nothing there. Just a silent, empty path. A low, guttural sigh that seemed to come from just behind a large, crumbling mausoleum. A sound of profound, weary sadness. I dismissed it as the wind, a trick of the acoustics, but the sounds were too intentional, too rhythmic. They were a presence, a malicious, intelligent force that was toying with me. The fear became personal when I was on my final round through the oldest section of the cemetery, a route I had taken 1,000 times. I saw a figure in the distance, a man standing by a tombstone, and I realized with a heart-stopping dread that it was the same figure from the beginning of the night. But this time, the figure was moving. It was following my patrol route, step for step, just a few hundred yards behind me. A perfect, chilling imitation of my own routine. I began to walk faster, and the figure walked faster, a silent, spectral puppet mimicking my every move. The final escalation before the climax was a sound that shattered my sanity. I was running now, a man broken by fear. I was running toward the main gate, my only hope of escape. My boots a frantic, rhythmic pounding on the gravel path. I heard a new sound, a sound of heavy, deliberate footsteps walking on the gravel path behind me, a sound that was a perfect, chilling mimicry of my own footsteps. The figure was no longer in the distance. It was now right behind me, following my patrol route, step for step, a horrifying parody of my own routine. The silence had been a lie. The stillness had been a trick. And now the dead were walking, and they were hunting me. I ran to the main gate, a small dark silhouette of a man against the vast, indifferent sky. I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking so violently I couldn't get them to work. I turned around, and I saw the figure, now just a few feet away. It was a man, a shadow of a man, with a face that was a distorted, rotting mask of pure hatred. It didn't walk. It shuffled, its body low to the ground, its limbs moving in a jerky, puppet-like fashion. The figure stopped, and with a low, guttural sigh, it began to mimic my own words, a perfect, chilling imitation of my voice. "Hello, is anyone there?" The figure then began to follow my patrol route again, step for step, a horrifying parody of my own routine. The police would find the gate locked. The dead were keeping me in. In a blind panic, I scrambled up the gate, my hands torn and bleeding on the cold iron, and ran for my life, not looking back. The sound of my own footsteps being mimicked by the thing behind me, a final, terrifying goodbye. The police found me the next morning, a shell-shocked wreck, babbling incoherently about a man in the cemetery. I never worked again. The memory of that night, the sound of my own footsteps being mimicked by the dead, is a weight I will carry forever. The silence of a cemetery is no longer a comfort to me. It's a lie, a trick, and I know that the dead are not just in the ground. They are walking, and they are always waiting for the next person to walk their path. We thought it was a stupid high school dare, a harmless night of rebellion in a place of quiet reverence. We thought the ghosts were the least of our worries. We were wrong. The cemetery didn't have ghosts. It had a hunger, a profound, ancient hunger that wanted us to stay forever. And it used our own voices, our own fears, and our own words to break us down, one terrified whisper at a time. It was a game, and we were the pawns, and the cemetery was the player. My name is Liam, and I was 17 when my friends Chloe, Daniel, and Sarah and I decided to spend the night in an old, historic cemetery. It was a place known for its urban legends, a place of crumbling tombstones and silent, forgotten statues. We were typical teenagers, bored and looking for a thrill, and the dare was a perfect excuse for a night of rebellion. The initial mood was one of excitement and camaraderie. We set up a small camp, a blanket and some snacks, and the night was young. The full moon cast a pale, ethereal light on the tombstones, and the wind, a soft, silent breath, rustled through the dry leaves on the ground. We were a skeptical, fun-loving group, and we saw the cemetery not as a place of the dead, but as a silent, beautiful backdrop for our night of adventure. The first strange event was a sound that was too deliberate to be natural. We were all huddled together on the blanket, telling ghost stories, when we heard it. A faint, rhythmic tapping on a tombstone, a soft, insistent tap, tap, tapping that was coming from the deepest, oldest part of the cemetery. We all froze, our laughter dying in our throats. We accused each other of being the prankster, but the sound was too deliberate, too rhythmic, too intentional. We dismissed it as a prank from one of us, but the initial camaraderie had begun to fray at the edges. The weirdness escalated. The tapping became louder, more insistent, more demanding. We started hearing our own names being whispered from the darkness, a soft, ethereal sound that seemed to come from all around us. Leah, Chloe, Danielle, Sarah. The whispers were a perfect, chilling imitation of our own voices, and they were coming from all directions. We began to argue, accusing each other of being the prankster, the liar, the one who was trying to scare us. But we all knew, in the deep, silent part of our souls, that none of us were doing it. Our paranoia grew with every passing minute. We heard a new sound, a sound that had no business being in a graveyard at night. It was a child's laughter, a soft, joyful giggle, coming from the deepest, most ancient part of the cemetery. The laughter was a perfect, chilling imitation of a child's, a sound of profound innocence that was being used as a weapon against us. It was a lure. We were no longer a group of friends. We were a group of terrified animals, and the cemetery was the predator. The fear became personal. We started hearing our own deepest fears being whispered to us from the darkness. A whispered you'll never amount to anything. A whispered you're all alone. A whispered you're a failure. The whispers were coming from all around us, a chorus of malicious lies designed to break us down, to cause us to turn on each other. The cemetery was not just a place of death. It was a place of profound, malicious hunger, and it was feeding on our fear, our guilt, our regret. The final escalation before the climax was the sound that shattered our sanity. The mimicry began. We heard our own voices, but they were not saying our names. They were whispering terrifying, hateful things to each other. I hate you, Daniel. A perfect, chilling imitation of Sarah's voice, whispered from the darkness. I'm going to kill you. A terrifying guttural parody of Liam's voice, whispered from a dark corner of the cemetery. The psychological breakdown was complete. We were no longer a group of friends. We were a group of individuals, terrified and alone. And the cemetery was using our own words, our own voices, to break us down. We were a house of cards, and the cemetery was blowing us down, one terrified whisper at a time. The friendship, the trust, the foundation of our group had been shattered. We were huddled together, terrified, as the chorus of whispering, hateful voices surrounded us. We were no longer a group. We were individuals, terrified and alone. We heard a new sound, a sound of heavy, deliberate footsteps walking on the gravel path, a sound that was a perfect, chilling mimicry of a human's. The footsteps stopped just a few feet away from us. We saw a tall, thin silhouette in the darkness, a figure that was not a ghost, but a thing, a living, breathing absence of life. It began to speak, a low guttural growl that was a horrifying parody of all our voices. Come and play with us. Stay with us, forever. And as it spoke, the figures of a man, a woman, and a child rose from the ground around them, silent, distorted, and menacing. The dead were walking, and they wanted us to join them. In a blind panic, we ran for our lives, abandoning our camp, our friendship, everything. We ran until we reached the main road, a symbol of civilization and safety. But we were not safe. We were forever changed. The police found us the next morning, a shell-shocked wreck, babbling incoherently. We never speak to each other again. The memory of that night, the sound of our own voices being used as a weapon against us, is a weight we will carry forever. The cemetery is no longer just a place of death. It is a place of profound, malicious hunger, and it is always waiting for the next group of teenagers to make a dare. My job was to maintain the final resting place of the dead. I mowed the lawns, cleaned the tombstones, and kept the peace. But I learned a dark truth, a secret that had been buried deeper than any grave. A cemetery isn't a final resting place. It's a feeding ground. And my job was not to maintain the peace. It was to be the main course. The dead were not just in the ground. They were a profound, malicious presence, and they were slowly, methodically, consuming me. My name is Arthur, and for over 40 years, I was the groundskeeper at a small, isolated cemetery. The cemetery was my home, a place of profound peace and quiet. I was a man of routine, a man who knew every grave, every story. The cemetery was a silent, beautiful backdrop to my life, a place of profound solitude and contemplation. I had a deep, almost spiritual connection to the dead, a connection that was about to become a profound and terrifying bond. I was in my late 60s, a man who had seen a lifetime of death, but I was about to find out that the dead were not just in the ground. They were watching, waiting, and they were hungry. The first strange event was a profound sense of exhaustion, a physical and mental drain that no amount of rest could cure. It was a feeling of being consumed, of my very essence being slowly, methodically drained from me. I dismissed it as old age, a natural part of a man in his late 60s. But the feeling was not just exhaustion. It was a feeling of being eaten from the inside out. My mind, once sharp and clear, became foggy, a blur of forgotten names and forgotten faces. The weirdness escalated. The names on the old tombstones, which I knew by heart, started to change. A name I knew as Mary was now Martha. A date I knew as 1945 was now 1967. The cemetery was a living, breathing thing, and it was rewriting its own history. It was a lie, a slow, subtle lie that was designed to break me down, to cause me to question my own sanity. My paranoia grew when I started hearing a sound that no one else could hear. A low, rhythmic humming, a sound that seemed to come from deep within the earth, from the graves themselves. The humming was not a sound of peace. It was a sound of profound hunger. It was a chorus of 1,000 forgotten souls, a low guttural chant that was designed to drive me insane. The humming was so soft, so subtle, that I often mistook it for the wind or the sound of my own blood rushing in my ears. But I knew what it was. It was a song of consumption, a chant of profound, malicious hunger. And it was coming from deep within the earth, from the graves themselves. The fear became personal when I started to forget things, not just small details, but memories, faces, names. I couldn't remember my own wife's face, a woman I had loved for a lifetime. I couldn't remember my children's names, the names of the people I had raised, the people I had loved. The cemetery was not just rewriting its own history, it was rewriting mine. It was consuming my past, my memories, my very identity. I looked at my reflection in a window one night, and I saw a distorted, gaunt figure, a ghost of myself, with black, empty eyes. I was becoming a part of the cemetery, a part of the profound, malicious hunger that lives in the ground. My skin was pale, translucent, my body thin and frail. I was becoming a ghost, a silent, empty shell of a man. The cemetery was not a final resting place. It was a feeding ground, and I was the main course. The final escalation, before the climax, was a sound that shattered my sanity. The humming from the ground was now a deafening roar. The earth began to crack and groan, and from the cracks, a series of long, impossibly thin, pale hands slid through the ground, their fingers tapping against the air, beckoning me. I was standing in the middle of the cemetery, a man who had lost his mind, his identity, everything. I looked at my reflection in a puddle, and I saw a face that was not mine, but a gaunt, skeletal mask of a man, with black, empty eyes. The hands from the ground reached for me, a silent, hungry chorus of the dead, and the humming from the graves became a low, guttural chant, a chant of profound, malicious hunger. The dead were not just in the ground, they were reaching for me. I don't know what happened next. A profound darkness, a deep, silent void. I am found the next morning, a silent, empty shell of a man, standing in the middle of the cemetery. I have lost my mind, my identity, everything. I am taken to a mental institution, a silent, forgotten soul. I never speak again. The cemetery continues to be a place of profound peace and quiet, but the new groundskeeper, a young, naive man, starts to feel a sense of profound exhaustion, a physical and mental drain that no amount of rest can cure. The cycle has begun again. The cemetery is no longer a place of rest. It is a place of profound, malicious hunger, and it is always waiting for the next groundskeeper to be the main course.